Introducing the Lisa Chill Collection, your answer to hot nights. These mattresses beat the heat with ultra-cool covers, whisking away heat for the perfect sleep temperature. Save up to $460 on Chill mattresses and get 2 free pillows when you shop now. iHeart listeners can save an extra $50 off by visiting lisa.com/iHeart. That's LEESA.com/iHeart. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
How powerful is Cox Internet? Powerful enough to let your band members in Vegas, Phoenix, and Rhode Island jam like you're all in the same garage. Get Cox Internet powered by fiber with America's fastest download speeds. It's internet built for tomorrow, today. Cox, always building better. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial connection. Speeds vary and are not guaranteed. Cox terms and other restrictions may apply. Analysis by Ookla Speed Test Intelligence Data. Fixed median download speeds. US Q3 2023.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. 1 touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, as well as the mobile app. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Meadow with you for the next 60 minutes. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Multiple ways to interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring. That is option number 1, 201-939-4513. You can also hit us up on Twitter, hashtag Giants Chat. You can also follow and interact with the two of us directly at Lance Meadow, one word, last name, M-E-D-O-W. He is at Giants WFAN. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So over the last few days, we've talked about the Giants finalizing their coaching staff, and we are now gearing up from a big picture perspective for Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. You got the Niners and the Chiefs. Last night was NFL honors. The Giants had a little bit of representation. Tommy DeVito was on hand, the celebration of the year as a result of what transpired during his run this past season. So that was nice. Saquon Barkley was also on hand, as he was a candidate for the Walter Payton Award, which went to Cam Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who does an incredible job in the Pittsburgh area
and let's
in
not
terms
forget
of what he's accomplished.
The local ties, because Craig Hayward,
sure,
the Ironhead,
Chicago
was,
Bears. Yeah,
but from Passaic County. Here in New Jersey.
I didn't know you were going to go there.
Local roots. He was a high school football legend here in North Jersey for many, many, many years, then went to Pitt. And then, of course, had a career in the NFL and tragically had a brain tumor.
Yeah, at 39 years old.
Took his life.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, his son has had a very, very strong NFL career. In fact, you could probably argue that he's had more accolades than even his dad did.
Oh,
when he
without
was in
a
the NFL.
doubt. Yeah, I mean, I really don't think it's debatable not to compare the father and
I'm
the
trying
son.
to be nice.
No, well, it's not a matter of being nice. Listen, it's about the facts in football. I don't think it's disrespectful. Listen, for 3 individuals in the same family to have NFL careers, because remember, Cameron's younger brother is also in the National Football League. That's a heck of an achievement. Just like the Watt family, which is kind of crazy because TJ is on the Steelers too. And think about he and his 2 brothers who have carved out NFL careers.
But anyway, so local connection in that Hayward did win that award. I know Saquon Barkley has done so much. We see it firsthand. And I do want to throw this out. I know the Giants Community Relations Department has done a good job of at least letting people be aware, because Saquon's very humble. He does not advertise any of the stuff that he does behind the scenes. And in particular, in recent times, I know this year, they did a good job of getting some of it out there, how he would host a group of young children after every home game and go out on the field with them and spend time taking pictures and autographs and this and that. And, I get it, folks. I totally get it. People outside the building who don't know about that stuff, can't take that into account. But that stuff is important. It really is. It's important to the community relations for the player, for the organization, for the fan base, and Barkley very quietly has really become one of the outstanding community-oriented players on this team, and there are other guys who may get more publicity for doing it. But I just want to tip my cap to Saquon Barkley. I'm glad he was a finalist. I'm sorry he didn't win.
Well, I think being a finalist, I would say, is an honor.
Says
in
a lot.
itself.
Says a lot.
And I think most of the individuals that do the community work, they're not too worried about whether or not they win the award. It's the substance of what they do on a daily basis.
The turkeys at
anyway.
Thanksgiving,
Sure.
the gifts around the holidays.
Absolutely.
Kayvon Thibodeau did something recently. I believe it was during the Christmas holiday. And I think, again, Community Relations may have actually put something out about it. He went to a local store, a general merchandise store, and they called in a whole bunch of folks who had put stuff on layaway. And they owed money, on goods that they had put a deposit down on. And they called a whole bunch of these people down to the store. They met Kayvon Thibodeau, and he said, okay, you guys don't owe anything. He paid off all their
Clean
bills
slate.
in one shot. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, people don't know about, but that's what these guys do.
Well, and it's also why I think when we have conversations on this show, we look at these individuals more than just football players. They're human beings at the end.
We
of the
know
day.
them.
Yeah, but I think that
we
gets
know
lost
them. We
in
see them every day.
translation.
We know them.
Yeah.
And yes, it does get lost. And, in all the negative headlines and for the few bad apples, comparatively speaking in the league, who wind up doing some nasty things, that's what sells, right? That's what TMZ is going to blow up. And I get that because the guys who do good are humble, they're modest, and they're not doing it for the headlines, so therefore they won't get the headlines for it. And that's why it goes unnoticed.
Well, and that's why I think what you just laid out is I would say the majority of NFL players are cut from the cloth of the Saquons, the Cam Haywards of the world.
Well,
as opposed to the small group that, to your point, may steal a headline here.
They
and there.
feel appreciative for what they have. They're grateful for what they have. And giving back when you can is part of the human spirit.
Now, as far as the other individual award winners that have more to do with X's and O's, I don't think there were major surprises yesterday. I think most expected Lamar Jackson to win MVP. He did have a fantastic season, and he helped the Ravens get to the AFC Championship game. Christian McCaffrey was a touchdown machine for Offensive Player of the Year, so that wasn't necessarily a stunning development. Coach of the Year, I was happy that Kevin Stefanski won, Paul. 4 different quarterbacks Cleveland utilized. They won 11 games. Amazing. I mean, how about with Flacco? So Joe Flacco wins the comeback player of the year. And when you talk about, just out of the blue storylines, I mean, like Rod Serling from the Twilight Zone could not make it up at what he was able to do. Again, we talk about Justin Pugh, coming right off the couch, right, for the Giants. Imagine a quarterback doing that at the tail end of the season and getting his team into the playoffs. It's a crazy story. Sure.
I mean, you can't make it up.
Well, it's funny you brought up Justin Pugh. Jonathan Casillas and I did a show about maybe a week and a half ago, and we did our end-of-season awards for just the Giants. And
oh, no kidding.
I had Comeback Player of the Year as one of the categories that we discussed.
Right.
And I gave it to Justin Pugh. Because I
Why
think
not?
Pugh is worthy of it. Though Wan'Dale Robinson was another guy we discussed as well because of what he went through with the torn ACL. But if you're talking about somebody non-injury,
right,
Justin Pugh, to me, is the runaway winner.
Totally concur.
Standpoint. Yeah. Now, I disagree with Flacco winning from a personal opinion standpoint.
Well,
because he played only 5 games. No,
yeah.
well, remember, last year, there was the debate about Geno Smith versus Saquon Barkley. Do you remember that?
Yes,
that was the big conversation.
Because of the injury or
Correct.
just because of a guy who hadn't done much.
Correct. But if you look at the criteria for the award is not just about injury. You don't have to be hurt to win Comeback Player of the Year. It's about overcoming adversity and other factors. So Geno, to me, did enough to warrant winning the award.
Understood.
But Geno played a whole season.
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield played a whole season.
Yes.
Baker is the equivalent to Geno Smith. Baker is the Geno Smith of 2023.
Yes.
That's who Baker is.
I would agree with that.
Okay? Joe Flacco is not somebody that overcame injury, and he did a heck of a job, as you mentioned, but
It's
he's a small
amazing
piece.
story.
He's a very small piece of Cleveland's story, though,
True.
considering he only started 5 games. So,
but the most important piece because he did get them into the playoffs.
sure.
And I think you could argue that if he had not done what he had done, they probably would not have made it.
Well, remember, they were battling other teams in the AFC North. It's possible. I mean, Flacco did enough to help them win games down the stretch. I'm
did.
not disputing that. But when I look
that's
at a
not
guy,
easy to do.
When I look at a guy, though, that played 17 games, was an afterthought by many in the league, had a great year, helped his team win the division and make the playoffs. Baker did do that. 17 games of a sample size should carry much more weight than 5. So
I understand.
That was the one award I had the biggest issue with. Outside of that, I mean, I know people campaigned for DeMeco Ryans to win Coach of the Year, and he did a really nice job with the Texans, but DeMeco did not have to deal with 4 different quarterbacks.
No.
And losing Nick Chubb, losing 2 starting offensive tackles. Remember, the Browns, I don't know what it ended up being, but there was a point of the season where Cleveland had the biggest percentage of the cap on injured players. So you do that, you deal with that, you win 11 games, you should be the NFL Coach of the Year.
Yeah,
So,
I would not argue that.
no, and I'm not saying you were disputing that. That was at least where I was coming from.
I don't want to get too much into this. I'm going to say it real quickly. Then I have something Giant related that I want to talk about with regards to the Hall of Fame. By the way, no Giants in yesterday's Hall of Fame class, but there could very well be one next year. We'll talk about that in a minute. My only thought was DeMar Hamlin coming back from dying on the field.
And he was a candidate.
Again,
he did receive votes, too.
And I know. I to me, that's hands down because of what he came back from. But I understand that philosophically, you could certainly, depending upon your criteria, you could argue against it.
Yeah.
But that would have been my pick.
Well, I mean, my issue with Hamlin is just like Flacco. 5 games and didn't even play 5 games, played 17 defensive snaps. It's a great story, and he deserves to receive attention for coming back, but we don't have to give him an award for that. I mean, that's at least where I come from.
I know where my vote was.
No, and listen, to each their own. And to your point, though, Hamlin did finish second. I don't know if you saw the final vote.
No, I did not.
Oh, yeah, Hamlin was blowing Baker Mayfield in the water, blowing him away. It wasn't even close between the two. Baker got 93 votes. Hamlin was neck and neck with Flacco, much more so than Mayfield. I was stunned by the voting.
Well, again, it depends on your criteria. And I understand that the statistical part of it would not have supported Hamlin. I'm looking at it from a different angle. That's all.
Well, clearly the voters were looking at it from your angle. I'll tell you that.
How about Jonathan Casillas surviving a torn Achilles to host the pre- and post-game show on Big Blue Kickoff Live? Thoughts on that?
There you go.
No?
There you go. I don't know if the national media.
How about us
Takes
surviving
that into consideration.
Charlie's call yesterday?
Oh, well, that's not really a comeback.
Yeah, that's
player
not
of the year,
comeback.
though.
That's more.
It's survival.
Well, if you could make up a new category,
Yes. That would have to be a new category. Yes.
But to our callers' more Giants interest, Adam Schefter of ESPN put out today the list of first-time eligibles for the class of 2025 for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and the one and only 2-time Super Bowl MVP Eli Manning is at the top of that list. And this is one of the reasons why I defy the skeptics and the doubters who want to come at me and say he's not a Hall of Famer. First of all, I think it's hands down. It's not even close. Milliseconds, you don't even have to debate it, in my opinion, but that's just me. But for those who say no, we'll look at the rest of the class of the first-time eligibles. He's actually coming due at a great year to come due, because even those who want to fight against him, and again, I ignore those people because they're wrong, but for those who want to, there's not a lot of competition here. There's Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, Terrell Suggs, Marshall Yanda, Marshawn Lynch, Earl Thomas, Joe Staley, Demaryius Thomas, Aqib Talib, Vernon Davis, Darren Sproles, and Cameron Wake.
Yeah, but that's not the only competition.
Now,
there's all the guys that haven't made it over the last few years, too.
Okay, but one would argue that there are very few quarterbacks who are even debatable who have been left out. So part of what happens is when they have a maximum of 8 guys that they're allowed to put in a given class. And part of what happens is when there's a debate and some guys get snubbed or pushed to the side and have to wait, is because there are other guys at their position. And there becomes a very strong argument, well, you can't put this guy in because there's another quarterback in the class who's clearly better than him. And I can't put him in because I'm not putting him in. And what they'll do is they'll weigh guys against each other who are involved in the same position. This will help Eli significantly because, Ken Anderson may be the best guy who's left over on the list right now? There's really not a glaring omission in the quarterback room when you talk about Hall of Famers. I think Kenny Anderson may be the best candidate who's not in.
Well, I mean, I was going to bring up, you bring up two-time Super Bowl champ. Remember, Jim Plunkett is a two-time Super Bowl champ.
Understood.
He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Understood.
So it's happened to guys that have Eli's individual resume. It's not a lock from that standpoint.
I don't want to debate that. What I'm talking about now,
Okay, well, that
because
seems to be your
because
strong selling point.
We have a whole offseason to debate Hall of Fame.
we
Let's
do.
not do
we
it
do.
today.
Look, I'm not debating whether Eli belongs in or not because he belongs in, and there's no debate. As far as I'm concerned, I will shut down any debate that there is. He's in, as far as I'm concerned. My point is, from a logistical perspective, what will help him is that there are no other quarterbacks in this first-year class. It's not like if he's coming up in a year when Tom Brady's coming up.
No, of course. But
Okay?
I just think there's
He's
a lot
coming
of
up in a
players in
year.
other positions, though, that are worthy. For example, Antonio Gates didn't get in this year. I mean, isn't Gates a first-ballot Hall of Famer?
I have no problem with that.
Okay, so Gates,
All
to
right?
me, is going to take
I got-
somebody's space.
I got no
next
problem
year.
with
I'd be stunned.
Luke Kuechly. I
Kuechly,
got no
to
problem
me,
with
is
him
also
either.
a first-ballot Hall
All right,
of Famer.
there are a few guys on this
Sure.
list who I would definitely give votes to.
I mean,
but
Torrey
my point
Holt
is,
hasn't gotten in.
My point is there are no other quarterbacks who someone's going to be able to use as leverage to argue against Eli.
No, I get that.
It's
Paul.
not
I
that
just,
won't be a factor.
No, I understand where
That's
you're
all
coming
I'm
from.
saying.
I don't think the voters are looking at, well, we've got one quarterback versus an island, and we're going to put the quarterback in. They're looking at the whole group of players, is what I'm saying.
They do, but when there are multiple people at one position, I know from talking to voters, when there are multiple people at one specific position, they will weigh them and fight them against each other. He won't have that problem now. Not in this class.
Paul, did you see the other great NFL news, by the way,
Yes,
that
go
came
ahead.
out? Adam Schefter, NFL playing in Madrid in 2025. I know you want more international games, so I figured
Well,
you'd
Brazil
be
was
very
just
excited
announced.
about that. Yeah, and by the way, I'm
Brazil is this year. Philadelphia's going there,
I'm
right?
talking to the people
The
upstairs.
opener.
I think it's worth it for us to send somebody to scout that location for a week, just in case we get sent there in the future. And I think you're the perfect man for the job.
Do you? You just want to get rid of me.
Yes. I would like to see you find the good walking route through like Rio de Janeiro and see how that goes for you.
Well, Madrid, Spain, though, that'll have plenty of
No, Madrid
areas
will be
to
nice.
walk.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
You'll be able to walk
It's
there.
beautiful, Madrid.
Yeah.
I've never been
Sure.
to Madrid, but I heard it's
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, he won't have problems there.
No.
The rule is, what is the new rule is you have to have an international game every 4 years? Is that the new rule that was
Yes,
just
that is
passed?
the new rule. Correct.
Okay, so now the Giants had one, not this season, but the previous
Against
season.
Green Bay, yeah.
So in 2022, so they got to go 23, 24, 25. So 26 would then be a 4-year
Well, remember,
span.
it doesn't have to be every
Yeah.
4 years. It
No,
could be
you
more
could have
frequent
others,
than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought they have to go
No,
through
minimum.
the 4-year rotation.
Minimum. Yeah. So, like,
Yeah,
the
there's good
Giants
teams.
could play against Carolina in Germany this year. Like, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, and the Jaguars play every single year overseas.
Multiple
too.
times,
Yeah,
So
correct.
that's a different deal.
Well, but I'm
They've
just
cut with the
saying,
Jaguars people.
all of these rules, I think, are fairly flexible.
Oh,
is what I'm saying. It's not-
I was thinking that it was
Etched in
going to be
stone.
every 4, and so there would be
No, you are not out of the
No.
woods, sir.
okay.
yeah.
Welcome
Well-
back to the jungle.
We'll see. We'll see.
Could be literally if you go to Brazil.
Yeah. and,
That is true.
and the Eagles, listen, we've had division games to open the season, so who knows what the NFL is thinking. I
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily remove that, but I would think, I mean, Philadelphia is giving up a home game for this contest. Now, if I'm the league, I wouldn't want to give up a home game against a division rival.
The
No.
Eagles
That's just-
certainly wouldn't
yeah,
want
that- That's
to.
just
yeah.
how
No.
I look at it. So I would be surprised if the Eagles do play the Cowboys, the Giants, or the Commanders.
I looked at the Eagles' schedule. The Browns game seems the one that's logical to me. It's an AFC game.
Yeah, out
Their
of
other
conference.
AFC
Yeah.
home game is the Steelers, and they're not going to want to put
No.
the Battle of Pennsylvania
No.
in Brazil.
No.
So I don't think that
You
makes a
want
lot
that,
of
yeah.
sense. And I think the other home game it might be Carolina, who they're not going to send to another international game if they're already going to Germany.
No.
So
So Cleveland makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
Cleveland might be how they go there.
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, if I'm the NFL, that's how I would be thinking. I don't think it's fair to take away a home division game away from a team, given the importance of how much weight that carries.
Not at all.
And usually, I'm trying to think, they don't do division games often in
No.
those overseas.
No.
No,
games,
they
so-
don't. I mean, but I'm sure we probably could find at least one that may have happened. I don't know. Maybe it's never happened. But
Who
I
the
find it
Chiefs
hard to
play?
believe.
Internet. They put
Oh,
the
the Chiefs played
Dolphins,
the
right?
Dolphins this past
Dolphins.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Take a look at that, Paul.
I would
don't
think
I'm
that
with Lenzo. I don't think that's
maybe
happened much.
one of them, but because Jacksonville, you figure, over the course of the years, right? No.
That's
Would've
also
gone up
voluntary, though.
against-
They voluntarily play home
voluntary.
games
No,
there.
no,
So
no. But what I'm saying is, given they do it in a voluntary standpoint, then to me it's maybe easier for them to relinquish a divisional game.
Yeah, right,
Because
exactly. That's what I'm
they're
saying. So
volunteering.
if anyone
Yeah.
has played a division game there, it's probably
it would
the
make
Jaguars.
sense. I mean, I know the
Yes,
Colts
correct.
went overseas this year. They played the Patriots, so I know they didn't play Jacksonville. But to me, if there's
Jets
a team,
Miami
okay, so
No,
there you
that's
go.
one.
in 2015.
So
All
there's
right.
one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a long time ago, though.
It is a while ago, but
Okay.
there was one in there. And that's
But Cardinals Rams, isn't that on the list over there? That's another one.
October 22nd, 2017.
Yeah.
Okay,
there's-
that's a
there's
good
two.
one.
Yeah, I'm getting more recent now.
Yeah.
I'm getting more recent now. Let's see.
What were you looking at, the World League games before you got to the recent ones?
Texans, Jaguars.
Yeah,
That's three.
there's another one.
Well, again, that's Jaguars, which you
Yeah.
thought might be
So
possible.
there've been a few. There've
There've
been a few.
been a few. So
And that looks like Titans Ravens.
Nope,
No,
that's
that's
No,
not.
that's
South and
not.
North.
That's not. That's not.
yeah.
That's it.
So
Yeah, so
three.
in the
Okay.
no, but
Rare, but it has happened.
But none the last 3 or 4 years.
yeah.
No.
Well, and maybe they learned their lessons from the
Yeah.
past, or they got feedback from the teams.
Exactly.
The team said, "Listen,
That's my
we
bet.
tried it. We're not doing it. Moving
You
forward."
want to do Super Bowl
So
predictions
it's,
before calls? What do
Yeah,
you think?
I was going to say I don't think the coaches would really
or the
sit-
GMs or the owners for that matter.
They're not going to sit
No.
silent behind a rivalry
No.
game going
No.
outside the country.
Well, and once again, Philadelphia has been a contender over the last few years. Not that that should hold weight, but it's one thing for Jacksonville to maybe make that argument versus Philadelphia too. So I think that may hold some substance. We'll get to the Super Bowl predictions a little bit later on in the program. We'll mix in. Unless you wanted to throw
he
something
just
out.
mentioned Super
Yeah.
Bowl. I just want to send out.
Sure.
I got a message from Spags this week because he and I still talk, and message was he wanted to thank everyone at Giant Nation because I told him that I've been getting tweets and we have mentioned him a few times on the show and people have even called up about him, supporting him, and he's thrilled with this team. He loves the Chiefs players. Really enjoys coaching these guys up. He feels very blessed to be with Andy Reid and to have the success that he has. But he says he never forgets Giant Nation and appreciates all the support that the Giants fans has thrown his way. And I promised him that I would let you guys know about that because he's a very humble guy and is very, very grateful for everything that he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, Chris Jones actually spoke earlier this week, the defensive tackle for the Chiefs, and I mean, he even said he was surprised that Spags didn't get much consideration for head coaching gigs as a result of what he's done. And we even talked about that on previous shows.
We
Paul.
have.
He was pretty much the overlooked candidate, I think, of all, especially guys that had success this year.
Did you know he is the only NFL defensive coordinator to have won Super Bowl rings with two different teams? Which is
Was
amazing.
not keeping track, yeah.
Well, when you consider
I mean, the Giants and the Chiefs.
There's
So,
been over, 50-something Super Bowls. We're 58 now? We're 58?
Yeah, 58.
58?
Yep.
They mentioned this on NFL Network the other day that he is the only one with two different Super Bowl rings from different teams.
But winning,
winning.
Though. So
winning.
There may have
as
been
a
others
defensive
that have been
coordinator.
to two but have lost, though. Isn't that possible?
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know if
that was not the
Well,
statement.
but I'm saying getting to two, even if you don't win, is pretty impressive.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
Sure it is. And think now, if he wins this weekend, the one with the Giants, then it would be his third with Kansas City.
Yep.
That would give him 4 as a defensive coordinator. Look, they didn't mention this on NFL Network, but I wonder if that might be pretty high on the list. I don't know anybody else that may have. I mean, do you consider
Coordinator with that many titles?
Yeah, that's-
I'm sure he's up there.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, other than, maybe somebody that worked under Don Shula is just coming to mind.
How about Josh McDaniels? Is he F4?
McDaniels with the Patriots. I have to
Well,
look at
offensive
when he
coordinator.
left.
He's offensive
Well,
coordinator.
but I
I
mean,
was
we're
just saying
talking
coordinators
coordinator
in
from the
general.
standpoint. Yeah,
Now-
Josh would make a good case there.
Now, I don't know if during the Steel Curtain days, when the
somebody
Steelers
under
when the
Chuck
Steelers
Noll.
won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, I don't know if they had a stable coordinator each one of those years. I don't know
McDaniels
that.
has 6. He actually was there for all 6.
as an OC.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
As an OC for all 6,
yeah.
huh? Wow.
So
okay.
right there.
That's pretty cool.
That's-
Well,
yeah.
no, he wasn't Troy Weiss the OC for the first one?
I think he was.
Well, they list him on this page. Here,
Or was
they
he
list
listed?
Him,
Was he
they list
listed?
him as 6. Let's see.
Well, he might have been the quarterback's coach and have a ring as a
Correct.
quarterback
Yes,
coach
yes,
that year.
yes.
Yeah, he was the QB coach in 04 and 05.
And-
McDaniels.
And was Charlie running backs coach one of those years?
I don't know the
I
answer
don't know
to
about that.
I'm not sure.
I mean,
Charlie
Dave
was-
Wannstedt probably had 2 with Dallas in the 90s before he got the Bears job, right? Who was the DC for the Broncos?
No, Weiss actually does not have a Super Bowl ring with the Patriots.
Really?
Yeah.
He has none.
Wait, hold on. You know
No,
what? I'm
that's
sorry.
not
They-
true.
That's not
no,
true.
you know what? I'm looking on the chart here. For some reason, they don't have it listed. But no, he's got. Now that I look back at he assisted the Patriots with 3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Between
I guess
2000 and 2004, he was there.
who is the DC for the Broncos for their 2 Super Bowl titles at the end of the 90s?
Was it Gary Kubiak there?
Well, that was the OC. I was thinking about DC. Wade Phillips wasn't there for that, was he?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
We're talking about the 97 Broncos and then
Yeah,
1998.
97, 98, or
Yeah.
98, 99, whatever it was. I'm trying to remember what the 2 years were.
Kubiak was the offensive coordinator. Greg Robinson was the defensive
Greg Robinson,
coordinator.
okay.
Greg Robinson won both. Yeah, he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Who was the Niners DC, Paul, in the 80s? That's a little before my time. I wouldn't be able to answer that question. And did Walsh even have an offensive coordinator, or is he just the guy?
No, Walsh did it. Walsh did it, but who was their DC during that time? I can't tell you that either.
Well, wasn't Seifert on staff?
Yeah, what was
Bill
Seifert?
Walsh?
Yeah, what was Seifert under Walsh?
Yeah, but I thought he was
Seifert-
quarterbacks coach, and then graduated. I don't think he was there for all of them.
I feel like Seifert was a coordinator.
All right,
I'm looking it up. Seifert was the defensive coordinator from 83 to 88.
Oh, he was DC. All right,
yeah,
yes,
he was.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Seifert.
Honestly, I didn't realize Seifert was the defensive coordinator.
Seifert was
I
an
should have
internal
known that.
promotion when.
Well, I knew he was an
on.
internal promotion.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just assumed he was on the
Yeah,
offensive
he
side
was.
of the ball.
Seifert's won 5 Super Bowls. 2 as the head coach, 3 as an assistant.
That's pretty good.
So
Okay, Bud Carson was with the Steelers for 2, and I'm looking to see if he's got any more. I don't know when he left. It's in those days we did not spend much time talking about assistants
staffs
and
also weren't as
coordinators.
big.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody cared.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Yeah. Well, I
In
don't-
fact, to be frank with you, I don't remember even giving a second thought to who anybody's coordinator was until Parcells had became head coach and had Belichick. Up until then, and this goes back now early 80s, you never thought about who the coordinators were. Never. Nobody
well,
cared.
that's because once again, I think the coverage too was limited. Right?
No doubt.
Well,
Now it's
where
through
did
the roof.
Where did the replacement head coaches come from back then, Paul? That's obviously before Lance's time. So if a coach got fired in like the late 70s or early 80s, they must have picked from the coordinator ranks, no? Or no? Or did they go from college?
Well, they would pick some assistants, but they would also pick some college guys.
Interesting.
It wasn't always
And coaches didn't get fired as often, obviously.
No,
back then either, right?
No, yeah. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Back in the day, you got a 5-year plan as a head coach. Now it's if you get 3 years, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Well, and that to me is the influence of the salary cap too. I mean, you're talking pre-salary.
Okay,
cap,
George Perlis was Noel's defensive coordinator for his 3rd Super Bowl. So Bud Carson only had the first 2.
Okay. Interesting.
So Bud Carson does not make it.
Yeah,
Well,
so
but
I think that's what, unless someone switched teams and got multiple teams, I think that's all the dynasties that we kind of hit there, right?
I mean, it's bottom line is
Spags
has a pretty good record.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty good record.
And someone came at me on Twitter, well, he's not a good head coach. I'm like, did you see the quarterbacks he had with the Rams? Like, he didn't have much of a chance there.
I mean, they were a team that was also in a transition as
they
well.
drafted
I mean, they were
Bradford.
horrible
He
transition.
got hurt, and it was just a mess there.
They had a bad ownership thing going on there too.
Yeah,
at
they
the
did.
Time.
Were they moving at that time or not
well,
yet?
It
No,
was
that
all
was pre-move.
It was all part of it.
But it was simmering.
It was all part of it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very unstable there. Very, very unstable.
Yeah, I know they weren't moving that early, but I think they were already trying to get a new building, and that wasn't
He was
working.
caught in a bad spot.
There was a whole thing going on
Well,
there.
I mean, listen, that goes back to the environment. Sometimes,
But anyway.
you walk into a situation. That's why he's probably better off if he stays in Kansas City. As long as Reed and Mahomes are there, he's not going to.
Well, Andy Reid's mid-60s, right? 65, 67, something
Andy
like
Reid's
that.
65, yeah.
He has not given any indication he's close to retirement.
No.
Well,
Now,
if you had Pat Mahomes as your quarterback, would you retire?
It'd be silly.
I mean,
make no sense.
We know.
He's trying to catch Belichick at this point, right?
You know,
Jeez.
we know that it's entirely possible to coach into your late 60s and maybe even 70 plus. I mean, Belichick made it past 70.
Well, Kansas City's
you
not
know?
kicking him out.
Pete
I'll tell
Carroll
you
made
that.
it past 70
So-
too. So no. So I don't think that Andy Reid is looking for an escape hatch anytime soon. But I will tell you this: if by some stretch of the imagination, Mrs. Reid told Andy, "That's it. You got it. You got to get out. You're done. We're finished. We're going to take care of the kids and the grandkids and so forth and so on." Kansas City would do very wise for themselves to boost Steve Spagnuolo into that spot.
Well, and they've done a good job promoting also from within on the offensive side of the ball, too. So I could see them at least going in that direction. But once again, I don't see Andy Reid hanging it up anytime soon, given how well that franchise has performed. And I think his better half probably realizes that as well. A few reminders before we open up the phone lines here. Giants Huddle Podcast, you can check that out on your favorite podcast platform. You can also go to giants.com/podcast. The 2024 season is around the corner. You can take your fandom to the next level. Season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships, they're now available To learn more, you can go to the all-exclusive member benefits section and visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the Giants official connected TV streaming app is Giants TV. It brings you original video content, game highlights, on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app.
The other thing I was going to say, going back to John's question about head coaches, back in those days, too, you recycled head coaches a lot, much more than you do now. In those days, it was very common to just recycle head coaches. Somebody got rid of one, and then the next team, we'll just take him.
Sure.
You recycled head coaches much more than you do today. Today, there's this proclivity to get the hot young coordinator, and let's boost him and give him a chance. But back in the day, John, a lot of times they just recycled guys. And teams just started flopping around.
Well, and also, I mean, I think the term innovator wasn't thrown around as often as it is today. I mean, you think about Don Coryell on offense, okay? And then on defense, you think about the Steelers and the Steel Curtain. We weren't grouping 5 or 6 different teams.
Well, I think early 90s, you had the run-and-shoot offense, right? You had the June Jones, Kevin Gilbride, that group. That was kind of like
Davis.
Innovative. Yeah, Mouse Davis, originated that. June Jones, you want to go to the college level, all that stuff. By the way,
there wasn't volume-wise.
Talk about recycled coaches. How about the defensive coordinators in the division now? Between Vic Fangio and Mike Zimmer, out of all the guys the Cowboys interviewed, that was one guy I did not want them to hire from a Giants perspective because I think he's a really good defensive coach. I think he's going to do a good job there.
Zimmer was a Parcells favorite.
Yeah, he worked under him, as well as Dave Campo. Sure. Yeah, the two of them.
Zimmer's had good defenses everywhere he's gone.
And now
Cincy, Minnesota.
That goes full circle for him.
Yeah, well, now all 4 defensive coordinators are solidified because there was turnover across the board. Mm-hmm. And Zimmer and Fangio obviously have previous head coaching experience. Joe Witt moves from Dallas to Washington. And then the Giants obviously brought in Shane Bowen. So 3 of the 4 teams brought in individuals that have previous play calling experience. Joe Witt is the new guy on the scene, but obviously worked under Dan Quinn in Dallas. So that is at least the landscape within the division. Let's open up the phone lines. We got Joe in Pennsylvania here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Joe? What do you got for us?
Oh, God, you guys do a great job. You have so many topics you can talk about there. That
Thanks, Joe. We're just trying to keep you entertained, that's all.
You really are. You know what I mean. You were talking about awards, and I was thinking when our Giants was down this year that Tommy DeVito could get a Cinderella award there. He brightened up the season there for a while.
He did,
and he really did, and he brought us back into it there for a while when we were in the doldrums. So and then you're talking about Spags and that, and I'm as coach, and I'm thinking, what is it? Dan Quinn? He was the Dallas defensive coordinator. Well, I think he went the same way. I think he was head coach and he lost out. He didn't do good, and then he went to Dallas and he's doing good again. And
well,
now
Dan Quinn did better than Spags as a head coach, Joe. He helped Atlanta
he went
get
to
a
Super Bowl. He did,
and won 10 games the following year without Kyle Shanahan, who left to get the Niners job. I really don't think those two are comparable.
It was a better situation.
Okay. I was thinking he didn't do as good, and now he's back as head coach is what I'm saying there. So,
well, I mean, he got fired as the head coach. He became a defensive coordinator again, and then he did well with Dallas, and he became a bigger name as a result. But I think the initial head coaching stint was far more successful than Spags' run with the Rams.
Remember, part of the other problem that Spags has is that the Chiefs keep going back to the Super Bowl. So
deep into the season.
You got to wait if you want to talk to him. Although I know they changed the rules a little bit, but still, you got to wait to get him in place because he's busy all the way into February.
Listen, if you love a guy, you wait for him. I mean, look at what happened. The Cardinals, they waited for Jonathan Gannon, and the Colts waited for Shane Steichen last year.
Hey, you were talking about all these defensive coordinators. Did I hear our tight ends coach? He was a defensive coordinator too. Now the new one we hired.
He was an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Tim Kelly. You're talking about. Yeah,
with the Texans and the Titans.
Was he defense or offense?
No, offense. He was an offensive coordinator.
Offensive coordinator. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking about our offensive line coach that we hired here, and where did he come from? The Raiders.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the way I understand, they had a fullback there a lot, didn't they, with the Raiders there?
Yeah, but that he doesn't get to make that decision.
Well, that's what I was wondering. We had a blocking tight end that got hurt last year, didn't we, Paul?
Well, I mean, Bellinger is our blocking tight end. Per se.
We had another one there, a younger guy.
Lawrence Cager, you talking about?
Cager's a receiving tight end.
No. This guy was more blocking tight end. Cager's more of a receiver.
I believe Chris Myrick is the name you guys are looking for.
But he was
last year.
Well, that's previous.
Yeah, correct.
Previous, not this past year.
Yeah.
And then he was IR'd, and then he left.
I said we don't have no blocking tight end.
Who was the guy that got put on IR that came here in the offseason, had the medical issue, and had to get put on injured reserve?
That's what I.
The guy from Buffalo.
The local guy from Bosco.
Yes, I can't remember his name.
My goodness. DeVito's going to strangle me.
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about.
Is he on our
roster? Tommy Sweeney.
Yeah,
that's it.
There you go,
John.
Tommy Sweeney. He was hurt.
Is he on our roster yet?
That's a really, he was on the non-football injury list, I believe, right, John? So I don't know exactly what his status is. To be frank with you, we could check.
He was released on November 28th. So he's no longer on the team.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's now he's totally a free agent.
You know what happens? Sometimes guys get hurt and then they work off of an injury release.
Right.
So he's no longer on the team.
Yeah, he is not listed anywhere on the Giants roster
on the
page.
team.
Yeah, well, that's why I was looking for a H-back or a fullback, thinking, well, maybe we'll get
they could
that.
sign somebody in free agency, Joe.
I hope they do with that offensive line coach.
No, but he doesn't get a say in that.
Yeah, well, I hope they do.
Well, once again, it depends if Joe Shane and Brian Dable prioritize that position. That's what it's going to come down to.
Well, that's what I'm looking for in the draft, because I don't think we'll sign that real good tight end, because he's not a real good blocking tight end.
Talking about Brock Bowers? Well, you don't have to, Joe. You do not have to draft a blocking tight end. You could find somebody in free agency. I promise you.
Well,
that's doable.
But that one receiver, the way I heard, he's like Brown. He's a real tough guy. The one there that the Giants could possibly draft. Am I correct that there's one there? He's not he's not the speedster, but he's a very solid tight end, big receiver, a big receiver.
Well,
he's
I
like
mean,
A.J. Brown.
Bowers is the top tight end.
Roma Dunzier is the big wide receiver. I think he's
not a tight end.
No, he said receiver. He said like A.J. Brown. He said like A.J. Brown.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's maybe the way I'm leaning to draft it, unless they draft a tackle there, and I was just hoping, maybe he can help him with the blocking.
Joe, if they're going to take a receiver, that's the receiver that I would prefer to have as well, if that makes you feel any better. But I'm not so sure I would take a receiver.
Well, what do you want to take, Paul?
I might try to trade down.
Oh, I don't know, like they said, if you're guaranteed that one of them guys are going to be a Hall of Fame guy, just about, and trading down. I don't know. I'd like a guy like A.J. Brown,
what if I told you I only traded down 2 or 3 spots? Everybody thinks when you trade down, you got to go down to like 21. You don't have to.
Yeah, but
you could trade back 2 spots maybe.
Well, why would somebody trade up 2 spots?
Because if they're desperate for one guy that they feel like they have to have.
Well, I'm leading between the tackle, which would be big, or this receiver that's like A.J. Brown.
Sure.
And I'd go, one way or the other, and like I'm saying, I'd trade down too. But if they can play like that, I think I prefer that. You know what I mean? He can help with the blocking, because our receivers are short and fast. You know what I mean? This guy here has body and control and stuff like that, besides speed, that you can throw him the ball and he'll win it in the air. That's,
sure.
That's
all right,
where
Joe.
I'd like to go.
Well, listen.
Okay.
Appreciate the phone call. Yeah, you got it. And I mean, in terms of his point about number 6, well, I mean, you piggybacked off of that. If they love a guy and there's conviction at number 6,
you got to take him.
I don't think you even entertain.
No, you have to take him.
Yeah,
I totally agree with that. You know,
That's the way that I look at it.
Now, if you don't have total conviction though, and if let's just say somewhere in the next 2, 3, 4 spots, there might be somebody who says, you know what, we need that tight end. Everybody wants to have that pass catching tight end now. It seems to be a little bit of a trend, right? So let's say somebody really is desperate for Bowers, and you're sitting there at 6, and you're the Giants, and you feel like, you know what, we don't desperately need him, but Team X really, really wants this guy, and we know that they want him.
Well, it depends on how far you got to move down.
I do not go past 9 or 10.
The response.
I'm not saying I would, but if it means a couple of spots, it's possible. It's possible somebody might be that desperate.
The problem is that there's no quarterback. There's probably no quarterback there. That's
probably not a quarterback.
Which is usually where you're going
to Usually. Which is why I'm bringing up Bowers, because he is so different than the rest of the tight ends. He's a unicorn, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through the teams after the Giants in terms of who would even consider going after a tight end, and I'm not seeing a lot of capital there. I mean, the Falcons recently drafted Kyle Pitts. The Bears have Cole Kmet. The Vikings have T.J. Hawkinson. I don't see a team. And remember, now I'm going into the high teens, by the way, in the draft, Paul.
Well, the Bears are 9.
Yeah, the Bears have Cole Kmet, though.
Right, but they're 9. So, you said the high teens. You could go.
Well, I mean, I'm going even lower.
You could
the
go
Vikings are 11.
You know, if you don't want to go past 10, John.
Jets are taking an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I didn't even throw that out there.
Well, they might want to trade up for a tackle. If they're that desperate for a tackle, that's a team that might want to trade up for a tackle.
And John Alt could be there at 6.
Joe Alt. Yes, John Alt is that.
I'm talking to you, John. That's the problem.
Oh, no. Well, John Alt also was that.
Yes, it is.
That's why you got confused.
13 years in the league.
Kansas City, yeah.
No, if you don't want to go past 10, I think you're probably right. I don't think anybody's going to trade up from the top 10 to get Bowers, looking at the teams, to your point. Mm-hmm. So if you don't want to go past 10, then I don't think Bowers is the guy. But it could be for one of the tackles.
The problem is that there are 9 guys that I feel good about, and if I don't get one of those 9, I'm going to be pretty mad.
Well, we've had that conversation the other day on the show. I understand that.
All right, let's head back to the phone lines here as we move forward. Hugo's in New Jersey joining us. What's happening, Hugo? What do you got for us?
Hey, guys. Good afternoon. There's a lot of hand-wringing out there amongst Giants fans regarding the tight end position. I know Len from Columbia, Maryland, has chimed in on this. And I wanted to – the reason I called the second time this week, I just wanted to put a bow on the conversation we had earlier in the week. I changed my opinions of players based on the information I gather. So I'm really very, very concerned about Darren Waller. And the reason I'm very concerned about Darren Waller is when we did the trade, there was some information I didn't know that he maybe didn't mean to reveal, but revealed anyhow during the year, is that he has some chronic nerve issue in one of his hamstrings. So my opinion of Darren Waller was a guy who would pull a hamstring, would rehab, and get back on the field. Now he reveals some information. And by the way, the Giants must have had this information because Joe Shank said he would do the trade all over again. I'm not a doctor, but when I hear a chronic nerve issue, I'm not so sure I would do that trade.
Well,
but
to be honest, Hugo, how do you know that the Giants didn't know that? Usually, I'm not saying they probably did. I would assume that 99% they did.
Yeah, I said just the opposite, Paul. I'm saying that they knew that information, and maybe they thought they could manage it. But to me, that's a much more serious issue with the hamstring than what I originally thought he had.
Okay.
So that was new information to me, and it raised an eyebrow. And I'm in the camp that you're almost signing up with that issue. You're almost signing up for Darren Waller to miss time every year. Okay.
Well, they knew that risk though coming in. I mean, he hasn't stayed healthy.
I know.
So
I know.
Yeah.
So
you want to get rid of him now?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm not suggesting that, but I think Lance's view was that adding a tight end, and I'm not suggesting Brock Bowers, by the way. We already talked about that.
Okay.
But that adding people to the tight end room, it would be more like a maybe even like a luxury pick in the middle rounds. And I'm in a different camp.
The reason I said luxury, though, is also I'm thinking about it from a financial standpoint. You have money tied up with Waller. You have money tied up with Bellinger. You're probably going to bring in a third tight end anyway. Maybe Cager is still in the mix. So it's like, how much of your resources do you want to put at the tight end position when you're not going to get these guys all simultaneously on the field? It was the combination of that on top of the fact that when Waller and Bellinger are healthy, those two guys are the two that you're primarily going to play. That was the thought process behind that.
Well, let me make this very simple. As I stand here today, I think we have one reliable, solid, not spectacular tight end in Daniel Bellinger on the roster. And I think the tight end position will need to be addressed somehow. That's my view based on the latest information that was revealed to us during the season. So I think that's why there's a lot of hand-wringing about the tight end position.
Well,
so listen, I don't want to monopolize. I've been on before. I don't want to monopolize.
Hugo, I will. Before you go, before you go, I will ask you one question, real quick. If you want to say the Giants could use somebody else in that room, I won't fight you on that. But understand they have other rooms that need to be addressed, and I don't see how you could make that a high priority considering the other holes on the roster.
Oh, listen, I already said not Brock Bowers. I don't even think there is a good free agent, to be a real high-price free agent. But I think we got to get another guy in here who is at least who can do some blocking and be at least effective.
Well, but you could do that through free agency.
Yeah,
that's my point.
You don't need many resources
to
get one of those.
Sixth overall pick to do that, though.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying middle round and kind of second round, third round of free agency. The room needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's my view. That's fine. I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
I'm going to give you one.
Yeah.
And I think, John, you might have had the chance to see him at one of the All-Star games. Ben Sinnott, Kansas State. That's my guy.
And that goes back to Joe in Pennsylvania because he actually played a little H-back and fullback in college, too.
Correct.
He had a little dropsies at the Senior Bowl. I'm going to rewatch the tight ends early next week. But big guy, physical in the red zone. He's not a super good athlete, but he could be a guy that can fill like that niche role for you if you want.
Blue collar guy, who gives you everything he's got. Not one of those guys, jack of all trades, maybe not a master of any.
Yeah, and I think 4th, 5th round.
I absolutely believe that.
That probably be the 5th round area for him.
I think so.
As it stands right now, the Giants are going to have to address the tight end position because Cager's a scheduled free agent, okay, and there's no guarantee that Tyree Jackson is back on the team. So normally you'd carry 3 tight ends or you'd carry 2 and a fullback. So, when people call in and they say it has to be addressed, we're not arguing that it shouldn't be addressed. It has to be addressed, like the quarterback position.
You don't need a lot of capital, though, to fill that spot.
And that's the difference. There's a difference between it needs to be addressed versus you have to go out of your way to address it. Those are two different things. So they could very well bring in a veteran free agent tight end as a complimentary guy to Waller and Bellinger. And that's it.
Or draft someone like Sinnott in the 4th or 5th round.
Sure,
and I'm with John on that. That's where I think he's going to land.
Yeah, but I mean, the people that want to debate Bowers, before we even get to the draft, there may be an additional tight end on the roster.
It could be. Yeah, there could be.
So,
sure.
It defeats the purpose of saying, you want Bowers. By the time we get to late April, early May, they could very well have 3 tight ends on the roster. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that's why we talk about you got to get through free agency first.
Yep.
Because you don't know how these things are going to play out. Leroy is in Charleston, joining us here on BBKL. What's happening, Leroy? What do you got for us?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing all right. What's on your mind?
Here's how I'm thinking, man. We got the what is it, the 6th?
6th, yes, 6th overall pick.
6th spot, right? Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have to take a tackle, man. I got from the off, man. We can't go with a wide receiver or a tight end. I hear you guys talking about that. I mean, it's like, to me, it'll be a wasted draft if we don't get the offensive line fixed, man. We have to get that fixed. And Paul, I know you was around for a while. You remember Paul Sells, I can't remember what year it was. He said, if we're going to play in the NFC East, we have to get the offensive line straight.
He always said we have to have an offensive line and we have to be able to run the ball.
Yeah,
that's what Parcells used to say.
Yeah, you remember that year he drafted Jimbo Elliott, Willie Ard, and William Roberts.
They drafted Eric Moore in the 1st round and Jumbo Elliott in the 2nd round in one of those drafts. And as it turned out, Eric Moore was not really the kind of guy you wanted, and Jumbo turned out to be the long-term star. And he was a 2nd-round pick.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Ard, you remember him?
Remember Billy Ard. Let Ard be your guard. And William Roberts, funny thing is, George Young actually traded up at the bottom of the 1st round with Washington. How about this? The old former Washington Redskins, and made a deal to get a pick at the end of the 1st round to go get William Roberts. And when William came in, They thought he was going to be a tackle, and he turned out to be a Pro Bowl guard, which does go to show you sometimes that transition works out very well.
Yeah, and and that's what I'm thinking. I like the wide receiver, the kid from Oduzzi, whatever his name is. I like him a lot.
Yes.
But to bring him in right now with the offensive line where it is, I feel like we won't be able to take advantage of him. Maybe in a couple of years if we get the line straight.
Well, once again, I mean, it depends on what they do in free agency. It also depends on how they feel about Evan Neal and the guys behind him. I mean, that's why when you bring in Priscillo, who's their offensive line coach, I'm sure you looked at Priscillo and you said, okay, talk to me about Neal, talk to me about Azudu, talk to me about McKeithen. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on those three guys? What do you think you can do to develop them? Do you think we could bank on those guys, or do you think we should prioritize going in a different direction? That's what I'm asking Priscillo before I even hire him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, and now, but still, but the young center we got, John Michael Schmitz.
John Michael Schmitz.
Yeah, John Michael Schmitz. Yeah. I'm thinking we need to bring in a veteran guard, an older guy, not the long-term future, but just for 2 or 3 years while this guy develops, man. I think he needs that. We saw how important Justin Pugh was to us last year when he came in, man, just what he brought to the team. And I'm thinking we need a veteran guard playing alongside of him, man.
Well, it's interesting that the Giants had a center, J.C. Hassenauer, who they had signed from the Steelers last offseason, and he got hurt in camp and was IR'd the whole year. Now, he's one guy who may factor into this mix because he did play some with Pittsburgh. It wasn't like he was a bench warmer. He played some with Pittsburgh, and they brought him in for a reason. And that's the one guy that a lot of us leave out of the equation when we talk about, that swing guy in the inside, and Ben Bredeson is an unrestricted free agent. And do you want to bring Bredeson back? I wonder if JC might have something to say about that equation or not. And because there's a veteran presence, right?
And he's an insurance center, too.
Sure, an insurance center who also comes from a pretty good program. I mean, the Steelers usually win.
Well, remember, he replaced Pouncey when Pouncey retired.
Sure.
They had him on the roster to utilize. Sean Harlow, by the way, is another guy that they had brought in, if you recall, too.
I don't necessarily see him returning as much as I see JC.
Well, I'm just throwing out, names that are veterans at least that are on the roster.
But here's the question for the caller. Again, I'm with you. They have to address the offensive line in some way. But here's the question.
Right.
If you're going to draft a tackle, let's just say for argument's sake, they don't get one in free agency because we know how expensive they tend to be. So let's assume they're going to draft a tackle. Are you drafting somebody who you believe is going to be the starting right tackle, someone who can push Evan Neal, or are you drafting someone who is the developmental tackle who's really the number 3 tackle on your roster? See, like when they drafted Matthew Parrott, they drafted Pert to be the developmental swing tackle who may at some point become a starter. What are you going to do? You have to figure out, and I know it's hard because Neal's been hurt so much, but you have to figure out what you think of him because that will determine the round or the cost of the draft pick you're going to use on the tackle that you acquire.
See, I would think, and Leroy, I appreciate the phone call. Thanks for giving us a ring here. I would think if you take a tackle at 6, the goal is you're putting that guy on the field.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. But if you just want a third swing tackle, maybe you wait till the 3rd round.
Correct. Then I don't think there's a point of using the 6th overall pick on a swing tackle. I think you draft an offensive lineman at 6.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Right.
I'm completely on the same page as you. I don't think you bring him in to necessarily even push Evan Neal. I think you pretty much That's, to me,
if he's number 6, he's playing.
That's a statement that they don't have confidence
Correct.
in Evan Neal.
Well, someone's going to guard, right? Whether it's Neal or the guy they pick at 6, someone's going to guard.
And that's the interesting thing, John.
Or Evan Neal becomes the swing tackle.
Or that.
Yeah,
that's
possible.
the interesting part that I don't remember any caller ever talking about to us when they decide about number 6. We've had a lot of people say, at 6, they got to take a tackle. Nobody even suggests that maybe the offensive lineman they take at 6 winds up being the guard.
Well, that's because you don't pick guards at 6.
Generally speaking, you don't.
Let's not relitigate
but
that.
Meaning to start at guard and then eventually kick out at tackle.
Well,
I mean, we've seen situations like that.
It does happen.
Sure.
It does happen.
Right, but you draft him to eventually play tackle.
No,
you generally
correct.
do not pick a guard
and
only.
Maybe the guy that, Luke Pettigrew, who was from Notre Dame and a former first-round pick of the Giants, right? He came out. They thought he was going to be a tackle. He didn't work out a tackle right away. They moved him to guard. Then he went back out to tackle. He wound up switching between both spots during the course of his career, depending upon what they needed at the time on the roster. David Deal moved all over the place.
But again, not top 10 picks.
Yeah, and also
Pettigrew was a first rounder, but not a top 10. But he was a first rounder. Deal, of course, was a 5.
Also, versatility coming into the league. Alt, for example, Joe Alt has only played tackle. He's an exclusive tackle.
Well,
same thing for Fashanu.
Right.
Yeah.
Both of those guys are tackles.
So, if you have the idea of starting them at guard, I think I'd want the guy to play a little guard at college to feel good about that.
You don't want to draft a guy in the top 10 and then change their position. No, that's correct. 100%.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
so
I'm with you.
I think that has to be
100%.
a part of the dialogue. One guy actually that comes to mind as we're talking about, how high do you take a tackle and what do you do with them? And I know he wasn't top 10, but it reminds me the Eagles took, remember, Andre Dillard.
Yes.
22nd overall pick. And I'm looking this up, 2019. And the plan was, he'd be the guy to replace Jason Peters.
Yes.
And 22nd overall pick, that's pretty high capital, okay? Regardless of whether or not it's in the top 10. And Dillard turned out to be a wasteful pick. I mean, Dillard's done nothing. Did nothing for the Eagles.
No, he's not even on the Eagles
anymore. That's what I'm saying.
He was a total bust.
So the reason I bring that up is it's one thing to say you want to tackle. You got to feel as if that tackle is going to come in and make an impact. You don't take a tackle for the sake of taking a tackle.
They believed it.
And again, 22
but
and
22
6
is not
different.
6.
No, it is different.
It's a
but it's
different
still
number.
a first-round
Sure.
pick, though.
It's a different number.
Okay?
It is.
And I guarantee you, if you talk to Howie Roseman and the Eagles front office, they would have liked to have gotten something out of the 22nd overall pick.
Correct.
In 2019.
Now, the one guy, if you want to talk about a guy that you could move into guard, talk about Talese Fuanga from Oregon State. That's a guy that could move in and play guard right away if you wanted him to. But I'm not sure you're picking him at 6.
For reference, Pettigrew was 19.
Okay.
I know he was down further.
By the way,
which is not 6.
Nope. Do you also did Pettigrew have some versatility in college? Because off the top of my head, I don't know.
I don't think I
was just curious if you remember that, Paul, or if it's written on his
Honestly,
page.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I thought he was a tackle in college, but I don't know if he played other spots prior.
Okay. Because once again, I think that if you're going down the road.
William Roberts was a tackle at Ohio State. But again, he was taken at the end of the first round, way at the bottom. So that also does not apply to your thought about being number 6.
Well, I will say this. Joe Alt, who's somebody that we've even talked about in some of our recent mock draft trackers, okay? That man has tackle written all over him. You draft him, he's coming in.
Oh, I don't think
there's
there's
guy.
Yeah,
okay?
you do not want to move him inside.
You're not going to box him into guard. I think actually that would eat away to his upside and his talent if you've watched what he's done on the edge for Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. I agree totally.
Yeah. So that to me, that would be an indication. And hey, this is speculation, but if he's the 6th overall pick, that's maybe more of a statement about Evan Neal than anybody else on the Giants roster.
Yeah, at that point, what? The players will be back for 2 weeks by the time the draft gets here?
I don't know what time the reporting date is, John.
It's come back mid-April, right?
Mid-April, usually.
So it'll be a couple weeks that he'll be with, but no on field work in those 2 first weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's why if you're talking.
And hell, Neal might not even be healthy yet. Remember, he had to have the offseason ankle surgery. So
well,
he might not be ready to do anything
We don't know anything.
Well, that's why I go back to, John, Brasillo, the conversation you're having with him is what he studied on film of Azudu, McKeithen, and Neal. And I know it's not an overwhelming amount of film, but you're telling him, go look at the film.
Well, I'm sure he studied them coming out of college too, right?
Sure, well, 100%. But I think you want to see what they've done at the NFL level because remember, Joe Shane at his presser talked about you turn the Alabama film on, you like what you see, but the Alabama film is not identical to what we've seen with Evan Neal on the NFL level.
I'm with you.
So all of that. And those are conversations that already happened.
Yep.
I guarantee you, Brasillo already gave them overwhelming feedback on those 3 players. Joe Shane and Brian Dable know how Brasillo feels about those 3 players.
Yes, I'm sure those are some of the first questions they asked
I'm willing to
That's
speculate
correct.
and feel good about that speculation. That's a big, just like Shane Bowen gave them feedback on every single one of those defensive players, okay?
Part of the
before
interview,
he took the job.
100%.
Yes. So those have already took place. All right, before we wrap up here real quickly, Super Bowl 58 coming up on Sunday, in case you were falling asleep or living under a rock, Paul. And I know you do.
No, there's one more football game to play on Sunday.
Now, let's understand, Paul is not really interested in the game. He just wants to see whether or not Taylor Swift gets there on time. That is really Paul's only concern.
No, I can see Paul interested in the commercials, too.
Oh, yeah, maybe the commercials. Oh, yeah. Usher at halftime.
100%.
Absolutely. I think that's Paul's focus.
Paul's gone to, 4 Usher concerts already over the course of your life, right?
I go back to when the usher used to bring you down to the seats at the theater.
I had a feeling.
Okay?
Yeah, I knew that's where he was going to go. Yeah,
I knew exactly.
Surprised.
I know exactly where we were.
It's too bad we didn't have this conversation about the Weeknd the previous year, and you could have made maybe a witty pun.
The Weeknd, he's a music star.
Correct. Well, that's why I'm bringing him up. Yeah, but the Weeknd, I don't think we had an in-depth conversation of your thoughts on the Weeknd and him performing.
He had a pretty big. He had a pretty big hit a couple of years ago, didn't he?
Yes, that's why he sang at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that wasn't bad. That wasn't bad.
No, he was the one that was in like the weird lit up box, right?
Was he
during the thing? And they like all the lights going on around.
That was
him
pretty.
And all
That was
that.
pretty cool. That was a pretty cool tune. Anyway, I'm picking Kansas City.
I'm with you.
There's no way I'm going against Spags. And when push comes to shove, I think that the Chiefs will be able to run the ball and somewhat control the tempo and the narrative of the game. I believe they'll be able to do that with their defense and with Pacheco running it. And in a close game, if the game is actually down to the wire, you got to put your money on Mahomes over Purdy. So I'm going Kansas City.
Yeah, Lance, to me, Chiefs have the better defense. Chiefs have the better quarterback. And if you could check both those boxes, and frankly, the Chiefs might have the better offensive line, too, to be totally honest with you. It's close.
Yeah. Tony's injury hurts him, but
there's very little chance Patrick Mahomes loses this game for the Chiefs, and I don't think the Spags defense is going to get lit up.
No.
So I think that puts a lot of things in the Chiefs' advantage. I still think it'll be a close game because, frankly, I don't think the Chiefs' offense is good enough to run away with anything. So I think we're going to have a game in the low to mid-20s. That'll be a one-score game in the fourth quarter. I think the Niners' best chance, because the Chiefs' defense, as you saw in that Bills game, has been susceptible to the run.
Yeah.
And Kyle Shanahan will just keep running Christian McCaffrey if you don't stop him. So I think the path to victory here for the Niners is for Christian McCaffrey to run for like 180, 175, which is not impossible, by the way. You could do that against the Chiefs' defense and keep Spags out of those crazy blitz packages and coverages he likes to run on third and long. And I think Kyle Shanahan will be more than happy to play that way. So I think that's the path to victory. I do worry about Purdy making some mistakes early in this game and Spags maybe confusing him a little bit. Some takeaways, and maybe that to me is the only way the game gets out of hand, is if Purdy makes mistakes early, short field, Chiefs score a bunch, then it's going to be hard to come back against Spags' defense, down double digits, all the stuff he does on passing situations. But that, to me, I think, for that reason, Chiefs better defense, Chiefs better quarterback. McCaffrey is the best shot I think the 49ers have, but I think it'll be a close game fourth quarter. Let's say Chiefs like 24-23.
I'll just add before you go that for me,
there's
the
nothing
X factor.
else to really add.
Well, there is. The X factor for me that really warps the game is the Chiefs dropping passes, which they did all season long.
Well,
It's
they've
the
avoided
worst.
that in the postseason, though.
But for the season,
Well, that's because they stopped playing Sky Moore and Arius Tony.
yeah, right. But
Well,
for,
Valdez-Scantling had
Nah, he had
issues,
some drops
and
too.
he's
You're right.
Travis
No, you're
Kelce
right.
has not been the most reliable this year either until the last
Talk
couple
about
of weeks.
flipping the playoff switch, huh?
Right? So
and that happens.
if the
You see that.
Dropsies suddenly come back and bite the Chiefs this weekend, I think that could prove incredibly costly.
What do you think, Lance?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is Josh Allen gave Kansas City's defense a lot of trouble. Purdy, I don't think is as big of a threat as Josh Allen. So, because to me, it's not just McCaffrey, it's Purdy and Deebo Samuel. I think you need the three of them.
Debo's a good point,
Yeah,
too.
if the three of them have success on the ground, and even, passes to Deebo that get some chunk yardage after the catch is an extension of the run game. So you really need those three factors. Those three factors click. That's where I think they get Spags' defense exactly where they need to be. And they're able to keep the game close and do some damage. If they can't do that and it's more of a Purdy game where he's got to throw 37 passes
that's bad
in that
for San
ballpark,
Francisco.
you're going to give Kansas City's defense an opportunity to put a lot of pressure on him.
Here's
And
a-
that's what concerns me.
Here's a strategy question for you guys. L'Jarius Sneed has been following the other team's best wide receiver. Who do you think he follows in this game? Ayuk or Debo?
I put him on Debo. I mean, that to me is that's the guy. If I'm Spags, that's the guy I'm worried about damaging the game.
Now, here's the thing.
More so than
but
anybody
Ayuk
else.
is the more traditional route runner.
He is.
So do you put him on Ayuk and then you put extra guys on Debo? The old Belichick strategy,
That's
right?
what I do.
Where you like you used to use Revis. He would erase one guy and then you put multiple guys on the guy you're really worried
Double team
about.
the one and single up the number two.
Or the other way. You double the two. You single up the two if you consider Ayuk the two, right? And then you put multiple guys on the one to slow the one
You double
down.
the one and single the two.
Well,
I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
That's
I'm
okay.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. 100%.
That's where I'm going.
No,
I mean, I like Trent McDuffie.
Oh, he's a good player.
I think McDuffie. So if I'm Spags, I have confidence, and maybe from that standpoint, because McDuffie is more of the nickel back.
That's why and they use Debo inside. That's what was my thought.
Debo under that knowledge and that standpoint, I could understand maybe he puts McDuffie more on Samuel and then leaves Snead for Brandon Ayuk, who's a little bit of a bigger guy. That I could see. I could see Spags going down that road, but to me, I'm more concerned about Samuel damaging the game than I am Brandon Ayuk.
And I happen to agree with you on that. I think that's a fair point.
Listen, it's good for Spags to have options.
Will either team get to 30 in this game?
No.
I think it's going to be borderline. I mean, I could see the score being 27-24.
Okay.
Something like that.
I think that's fair.
I think it'll be just under 30.
I think both teams will be between 20 and 28. I think that's the range they're going to kind of be in.
Yeah. Well, because both defenses, as good as they've been susceptible.
Yeah, the Niners defense especially. They have not played well the last couple of weeks. I think the Chiefs defense has been significantly better than them in recent games.
Yeah, and that's why it brings me back to this is really a Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw game. Because you brought up Pacheco. Pacheco's a violent runner. Yes. If they don't bring him down.
And covering Kelsey in the middle of the field, too, right?
So, I mean, those two guys are probably going to be more critical than anything else for Steve Wilks' defense.
The Niners' rush defense has not shown the grit and the ferocity that they had in recent times.
Yeah.
They have not lived up to their billing, which is a very big thing for me. I think that's going to ultimately be their downfall.
Yeah, and remember, they also have Javon Hargrave, who they brought over from the Eagles, and we're not even talking about him, too.
I know, but
and Chase Young, who came over from Washington.
But Hargrave is the guy inside.
But you're talking names and reputation. The film hasn't shown.
No, and I agree with you.
It hasn't shown.
And I don't think that's
been susceptible.
Enough talk about that. The fact that the Niners have been far from a shutdown unit.
And by the way, I think losing, Steve Wilks going in there and replacing DeMeco Ryans has been a low-key reason why the Niners have taken a little bit of a drop the back end of the year.
Maybe.
I think DeMeco Ryans, I think they probably took a little bit of a downgrade there going from DeMeco to Steve Wilks.
So doing something different from that standpoint,
And I think,
coordinator.
Look, the key to being a good coordinator in this league, guys, you know this, and we've kind of talked about this before. Can you make adjustments when team adjusts back to you, right? You can do something great, teams figure it out, then what?
It's the counter.
It's the guys that have the counter that are the great coordinators. And does Steve Wilks, can he figure out the counter in this game to what teams have been doing to this Niners defense? We know Spags can. Spags does that mid-game. He doesn't even wait for games to end. He's doing that, first quarter, second quarter.
They shut down Josh Allen in the run game in the second half.
Perfect example. Perfect
and they
example.
were shredded in the first half.
So, look, if you're a great coordinator, what do you do when somebody says, all right, well, we figured out what you're doing and we can beat you? Can you adjust back to that? And we have to see, and how those teams adjust over the course of these games. These are great coaches, right? Spags, Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan. These are great coaches, the best in the world. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They're going to have stuff ready to go.
Oh, sure.
How do you adjust to that stuff once they show it on the field?
And trust me, Kyle's got more pressure on him than anybody else in this game, given he's looking for that elusive first ring as a head coach. So
something tells me he's not going to lose his job if they don't get it.
No, and that's not what I was insinuating. But
I know you won't.
I think if you look at my point is all players and all coaches, Kyle's at the top of the list.
The media narrative's going to be ridiculous if they lose for him.
Gets to the big game, can't deliver this and that, can't close it. It's unfortunate because he's a really good coach.
Yet there's like 28 other teams that would probably
they would fire their coaches tomorrow if Kyle became available.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's the NFL.
Good show, guys. That was
all
fun.
right, absolutely. So that is going to wrap up Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll be up and running again on Monday, as I'm sure we will recap Super Bowl 58 and everything else that takes place over the course of the weekend. Today's episode is part of the Giants platforms everywhere and Giants.com/podcast. For John Schmelk, Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Meadow. Enjoy the weekend. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. We'll speak to you on Monday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.
Tired of restless nights? At Leesa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Leesa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to Leesa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See Leesa.com for more details.
Why?
Why?
If you have T-Mobile 5G home internet, you might be hearing this
Why?
a lot.
Why?
Every time your internet slows down during the busiest hours.
Why?
Why?
Because your network gives priority to cell phone users.
Why?
Good question. Why not switch to Cox Internet with 2 times faster download speeds than T-Mobile 5G home internet during peak hours?
Okay.
Stop the whys and visit cox.com/5G home for details. T-Mobile prioritizes certain T-Mobile phone users over home internet users during times of congestion.